The Michigan Wolverines win the college football national championship game. Let's talk about it.
This year's college football playoff championship is in the books, so we're back on the big mountain to break it down for you.
Hey, it's great to have you on the mountain. If you're new, I am JY. This is my good friend Steve. We did a preview video for the national championship game, and now we're going to do a summary review video for the national championship game. And I will just start out by saying Steve was right. He picked Michigan to cover, and they clearly covered. I picked Michigan. I put all my stock on Penix, and they didn't cover the 4.5. They obviously lost by more than that. So was a little worried early on, Steve. I actually texted you in the first quarter. I said, is this going to be a blowout? Like, whoa, hold up, timeout. This is getting a little nuts. Fortunately, it calmed down a little bit, but really the first quarter kind of was what played out throughout the game. And that, Michigan just getting the points they needed, and then they were able to control the tempo of the game, able to control the game they wanted to play, which is that power run game. When you get that early lead, that's exactly what you need to do it. And breaking two huge runs to get that lead, both to the outside, was very, very impressive. But I want to throw it to you, Steve. I want your take on the game.
Yeah, so before I get into the game, yes, I got this one right after you had gotten the two semifinals.
Semis, that's right, yes.
So, basically this game, this game kind of went, a lot of the things happened in this game that I expected to happen in those two semis that didn't quite play out. Yeah. In the semi, Washington was able to get out ahead of Texas. The passing game, just beautiful passes. They had gotten out ahead of them, got a lead, and they got Texas to go away, I think, way too early from their running game. Yeah. Well, this game was the complete opposite. Michigan came out, dominated, won the first quarter 14-3, but it felt like it could have been 30-3.
Absolutely.
Just absolute domination, physical domination. I think at the end of the first quarter, Michigan was averaging something like 25 yards a carry, and that wasn't just one big run that was broken. It was run after run. Both Edwards and Corum were going off. Yep. Just physical domination. And that's around the time, I think, maybe when they scored their second touchdown, when you said, is this going to be a blowout? Because it just looked rough. It looked like we had a national championship contender versus a Pee Wee football team, for a little bit. And like you said, Michigan came out and did exactly what they wanted to do. They went to their normal game plan of run the ball, physical, tough football. And Washington was not able to do what they wanted to do. Right away, Michigan set the tone. That pass rush, getting to Penix. Penix had no time and then also in the first half, especially in the first quarter, you saw the Michigan DBs blanketing those awesome wide receivers from Washington. Right. No one has been able to do that for the most part. I think Oregon came the closest with their DBs. Yep. But Penix was able, against Oregon, Penix had some time, was able to hit them. But the combination in the first quarter of the Michigan DBs were playing tight coverage, and Penix had absolutely no time. As soon as the ball was snapped, within a second and a half, he had Michigan guys on him. So we end the first quarter 14-3. Yep. Total domination. We're thinking this is going to be a blowout. What were your thoughts at that point?
Well, exactly that. I thought I was very worried. You had the two huge runs that just, and the one, Edwards kind of is, he's not stopped because he wasn't wrapped up, but he kind of got lost behind the line and is able to bounce it out, and just gaping holes out there. Everybody kind of crashed in. The second one I saw, the linebacker that looked like I think it was a linebacker that looked like he was covering. He bit to the one side, and the linebacker bit hard. Again, kind of got lost in the shuffle. And as he came back out, the linebacker never saw him. Yeah. And he was just gone. Just gashing runs there. And I was worried about the defense, about Washington's defense. I'm thinking, my goodness, if they can't start controlling the line of scrimmage a little bit better, this is going to get out of hand in a hurry. Now, thankfully, they did start to control things a little bit better. And once Michigan got to the 20 points, not to get ahead, but they were able to kind of bounce back and hold their own for a while in hopes of the offense picking back up, but it didn't. So I'll let you take on from there.
Yeah, so as we moved into the second quarter, it really felt like Michigan forgot that they were, like, the first couple series, their bread and butter, everything that they love to do. And then we get into towards the end of the first quarter, into the second quarter, and it's like they forgot they were getting 25 yards a carry, running the ball. Kind of went away with it. I think there was a drive maybe at the very beginning of the second quarter where just a 3-and-out, 3 throws from JJ, who was not super sharp. Made some plays with his legs, made a couple throws, but was not super sharp. So Michigan goes away from the run. They try and throw. I think they were trying to show that balanced offense, which they were all year.
Yeah.
But really, they didn't have a lot of success. And Washington started to scrape their way back in. They get a couple throws. So I want to give DeBoer a lot of credit. He recognized right away, or the offensive coordinator, the staff for Washington, they recognized there's no way that we're going to be able to give Penix 3, 4, 5 seconds and hit these wide receivers deep.
Right.
So they immediately, I think after the first quarter, switched to a short passing game. Tons of screen. They were screening the heck out of Michigan. It was working for 6-7 yards, a carry here. They finally get some completions going, some short passes that turn into longer passes, some medium passes, and they score a touchdown. And we go, and all Michigan gets is a field goal because their offense, they kind of had gone away from the running game.
Right.
And also, I think Washington did make some adjustments. They started to put 7, 8 guys up in the box.
More into the rush.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we go into halftime, and it's only 17-10 Michigan, which feels completely crazy. It feels like this game should be like 40-6 or something. Right. But you got to like where Washington is. They score a touchdown at the end of the first half. They know they got the ball at the beginning of the first half. You like where they are. They have all the momentum at that point. And we go into halftime, pretty close.
And that was exactly my thought. I'm thinking, wow, they didn't play a good half, specifically didn't play a good first quarter on both sides of the ball. You absolutely think they're going to be coming out of that with more than 3 points in one quarter, and then they do get that later touchdown at least to get up to 10. But I'm looking at it at halftime going, wow, 17-10 from where I was at towards the end of the first quarter saying, is this going to be a blowout? I'm thinking, okay, they kept it close. Now give me the third quarter you had against Texas, because that's when they really started to pour on the points, was in that second half against the Texas game. So I'm thinking, hey, maybe the worst is behind us, being the guy that picked Washington. Maybe the worst is behind us, and they can come back, and they've been doing it all year. I mean, and I heard some announcers, I think they said it on the broadcast. This was at the halftime. This is a team that they weren't used to winning games big. I mean, they could, but they have been through slobber knockers with Oregon, and not that Michigan wasn't, but I think in terms of which team was more battle-tested, I think Washington was. So I would think going in there, they're not thinking, hey, we didn't have a good first half, but we're only a touchdown behind. We're going to get the ball. We know what we got in our offense. That's defensively just bend, don't break mentality. So I was actually kind of, even though it didn't look great, I was pretty positive with a 17-10 halftime. Picking the Huskies there.
Yeah, so. And so for our audience's knowledge, both of us were rooting for Washington. I picked Michigan to win, but I said I was hoping for Washington to win. JY picked Washington to win, and I think you were genuinely rooting for Washington.
Yeah, I was.
So both of us, we feel good. Where it's we were texting back and forth. Hey, this is a brand new game. This is we're excited. The second half starts, and bam, right away. Washington Penix throws an interception. I think it might have been the first play of the second half. It was very early into the second half. Boom. Michigan gets the ball back right away. Just deflates all of that momentum. Takes the momentum away. But the thing now with the third quarter, just a lot of kind of muddling back and forth.
Yeah.
Both teams had kind of made adjustments. JJ continued again, he just seemed to be off.
Yeah.
Penix, he didn't have his greatest game either. However, he was just under duress every single play.
Right.
Just really hard for him. So neither team really does much. I think each gets a field goal in the third quarter.
Right.
We head to the fourth quarter, and it's still a game.
Absolutely.
Washington is still in it.
Yep.
It's still a game.
Yep.
And really, I'm just going to move right into the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
This is where that physical grinding game plan by Michigan. They had the lead. This is what they want to do. And even though Washington was going up, putting 8, 9 guys in the box at some times, and they were stopping them. But eventually, you knew they just couldn't continue to do that. I think Edwards breaks off another run. Corum gets some of those runs where he's just pushing and pushing and pushing that leg churn.
Yep.
and they just can.
And JJ with 2 big runs.
Yes,
he had that one where he
like,
scooted right down the middle, and I don't know what it was, a 30 or some yard run. They
Yeah.
went right back to him, got another first down. So they were running the ball really well there in the fourth.
Yeah,
quarter.
3rd and long, and you thought, hey, JJ has to go back and throw,
That's
and
right.
he hasn't done well, and you're thinking if Washington get a stop here, it's a game. JJ gets a long run, gets a first down, keeps that drive going. You know, and it was difficult. He was using his legs. I mean, all 3 of those guys, JJ. You have Corum, you have Edwards breaking off runs. Even Washington tried to do everything they could, put 8, 9 guys in the box. Sometimes they were stopping them cold. But I think that's really where the offensive game plan started to wear on Washington. And then Penix, he just kept taking a beating. You know, he throws a couple interceptions, they just could not get anything going. There was one play, which I know you probably have some thoughts on, so I'm going to bring it up. I think they were down maybe a touchdown or maybe 10 points at that point.
Yeah, I think it was a touchdown.
They're finally driving. He finally gets there's pressure coming on him, but he kind of ducks the guy, chucks it downfield, and Odunze wide open. The Michigan guy comes and basically like tackles him.
Right.
It's pass interference, and you're like, okay, great. This is, Washington's in business. They finally hit the big play. Well, we see there's 2 flags. There's a holding call and a pass interference. They kind of negate each other. I know you saw a replay of it. What were your thoughts on that one?
Well, there was 2. There was that one, but even before that, there was the one that was just the holding call.
Oh, that's right, just the holding call.
So they finally hit a big play, which they hadn't hit any before the first one. Any passes beyond 20 yards, which for Penix in this offense, that's what they do. So the first big play to Odunze down the right-hand side, and they call a holding call, and I just with the way the rest of the game was called, I didn't really like it. I know you can sit here and place Monday morning quarterback or Tuesday evening quarterback. But, and it is what it is. You're going to get calls and you're not. I just didn't like that call in a national championship game. I mean, yes, the guy's arm was extended somewhat, but the guy, just kind of threw himself at Penix because he was trying to get there. I think it looked worse than what it actually was. And it wasn't the guy, I don't think the Michigan player was doing it intentionally to make it look bad. I think he was just doing what he could to try to get to Penix. Yep. And they called it. I really didn't like that call at all. And I know I was actually listening to the radio at that time, and they were really questioning the call as well. ESPN radio. And then the one you're talking about with the pass interference, it was a kind of a last ditch effort on that one, if you will. And again, pass interference call, but it gets a holding call as well on the same guy. I can't think of I can't remember the name, but it was the same guy that had both holding calls. I think the second one was a more legit hold, but that first one was
rough.
That was tough.
It was weak sauce.
For the first time that they get that pass that they've been winning games with. It's what they do. To me, little ticky tack. But what you gonna do?
Yeah. I mean, and anybody who's either officiated football or maybe has played offensive line will tell you that you could call holding on every single play. Yeah. It's just whenever the refs either decide to call it or they just see something that looks weird to them and they decide to, they throw the flag. And I guess that one looked a little weird, but on replay, especially slow-mo, it looked completely weak. Yeah. I think everybody was in agreement. The TV announcers thought it was weak. Pretty much everyone on Twitter thought it was weak, the radio guys. So that one was weak. And then the other one, it was a legitimate call, but it's just, bad timing of when you finally get that pass interference.
Another big play. And, I think they ended up only with one large pass play in the whole game. So massive props to Michigan, that secondary, but really that D-line causing, to your point, taking away that time from Penix in order that extra second for him to take to hit those long balls. They just couldn't get it.
No, in the shots to Penix, he didn't get sacked a bunch, but he was getting rid of the ball quickly. Yeah. There's some people kind of were criticizing Penix, he didn't play well. Well, in the first half, the Michigan defensive backs, they were tight. They were blanketing those Washington receivers. And even if a guy would catch a ball, there was a first guy on him, second guy was in there right away. They were playing really tight, and he was getting hit right away. Now, in the second half, Michigan did, with the lead, they started to drop their coverage, play softer coverage back. Yep. But I think the hits, the pressure, and all of that it took its toll on Penix. There were times he looked like he either had bruised ribs or a cracked rib or something. He was in pain. He got his ankle stepped on. Went into the tent, I think, a couple times, and he just took a beating, even there wasn't a lot of sacks. And I think that just wore down on them to the point where, even with those holding calls, they just couldn't they couldn't get right. They couldn't hit that big play.
Right.
They couldn't do what Washington does. And that's what I was worried about.
Yep.
We talked about this coming in. Washington, and we haven't even talked about Johnson at all.
Right.
Him, he was hurt. He just had no burst. He had nothing going. The Michigan D-line and the linebackers were right on him.
Yep.
So they were really, unfortunately, a one-dimensional offense, which that's what's exactly what you don't want to be against Michigan with that great defense. But that's what they were. They were one-dimensional. And Penix, the hits piled up. They just took its toll, and he just couldn't do what we've seen him do all year.
Yeah.
In every game, and I know that's why you had faith in him.
Yep.
Did it to Oregon a couple times, did it to Texas. Whenever they needed a big play, he was able to hit them. But in this game, they just weren't. So it is what it is. Michigan, as we've talked about, all season we basically had either Michigan or Washington as our number one team in our power rankings. I think maybe one time we had Ohio State as one, but I'm sure Michigan, we had the most number one team in our power rankings. They've just been the best team all year. We're not going to talk about the whole cheating scandal and all that stuff because we have no idea how that affected the season and this game and what's going to play out with the NCAA. But on the field this year, Michigan was just the best team in the country. They showed it all year. They have their style. They don't apologize for it, and they can go back to the well. That tough running game, the tough defense. They did it again, and they're the national champs.
Yeah, and I give them massive congratulations. I was high on that team and JJ the entire season. JJ, again, did he stand out like Penix has done in games? No, probably not. But he did everything he needed to do. When he needed to make a play on his feet, he did it. Made some nice passes there in the second half, too. Props to the team. Props to him. I think, obviously, the deserving national champion. Again, I'm going to put all that other stuff aside. But what was done on the field, absolutely the deserving national champion. And the Big Ten with a national champ again.
Yeah, which is great for them. And both of these teams are going to be playing in the Big Ten next year. Now, I'm going to take one last opportunity, I'll stop beating this dead horse.
Okay.
This is my last opportunity. Penix, I'm going to say one more time, especially for our Washington Husky fans out there, Penix was absolutely robbed of the Heisman Trophy this year. You see what he did in these playoffs. You see how much he meant to Washington. And yes, we finally get this one game where he couldn't do what he did all season because of... he's playing against the best team in the country, arguably the best defense and pass rush and all of that, and they finally were not able to win. But you saw what he did all year. He willed this team to victory. The most important player in the country, the best player in the country, and was absolutely robbed out of the Heisman Trophy by a guy who was racking up stats. I'm sure Daniel's great quarterback, great player. But total different situation. They didn't need him to win games because they weren't in games. They kept Daniels in games late to rack up stats. They kept him in against poor teams to rack up stats while Washington was trying to win football games and win a national championship.
Yeah.
And Penix was the number one player this year, and he was completely robbed. And that's the last time I'll get on my soapbox about it.
Well, hear.
Yeah.
Hear. Hey, with that, we're going to wrap this one up. We are going to do a bowl summary in terms of all the Big Ten, all the Mountain West teams that were in bowls. We're going to do a reaction video to that come out here in a day or two. And, of course, we're going to stay on this ACC-FSU lawsuit. We have another episode coming out on that as well. So stay with us here in the Mountain. We are going to be doing all football throughout the entire off season. We have a lot of things planned. We're going to have a planning session here soon and get some of this stuff out to you guys. But we're going to stay with this. Keep popping out videos. Hope you like us. Make sure you give us a like on this video. Make sure you subscribe if you like our content. And with that, we'll see you next time on the Big Mountain.